This next article from NPR, U.S. House of Representatives votes to condemn QAnon conspiracy theory. Quote, it's a sick cult, and quote, the House overwhelmingly approved the resolution, and it's because they're controlled by Democrats, because they don't want you to talk about the riots. They want to blame the right for stuff that they're doing and say that it's the QAnon people who are then part of the Boogaloo movement, and that's the reason why these riots are happening. It's not the Democrats causing race riots; it's the right, because they can't say it's our fault. We've been encouraging people to race riot and burn down the hood. So instead, they have to say it's the Republicans who are doing it because that's their political enemy. It's a straw man argument. And the U.S. House of Representatives is controlled by Democrats. And so this is why you can't really believe any of this shit that they put out, because really they're all just self-serving. It's just a political attack. They're just trying to control the 2020 election by controlling the facts and painting the right as these insane conspiracy theorists. And they're saying this is a sick conspiracy theory. Like, okay, let's examine this. Okay, so it's a batshit crazy conspiracy theory. Some of it. So what are they saying in QAnon? They're saying there's a satanic cult of pedophiles that are engaging in a sex trafficking ring with minors. And then it goes into batshit crazy land where they say they're making gravy out of 2-year-old kids' brains. Some of this stuff is just like crazy. It's like sarcasm. It's like shock humor. It's not meant to be taken seriously, but there are drug cartels, and there are approximately 460,000 children turn up missing each year, and about a third of them are kidnapped, and that's like about 160,000 kids. So there is a large number of them are sex trafficked. So not all of them are little kids. A lot of them are teenage runaways. So the number of kids that we know that are in the human trafficking network aren't as large as the number of teenagers. We know that there's the Jeffrey Epstein thing where he was paying hookers. It's arguable if it was a sex trafficking network or if it was a hooker referral thing where like one woman was like referring another woman, and then they would just have a limited number of them at a time. One's worse than the other. One of them is like you got a network of people who are trying to pimp women out for money. Another one, you have rich people who are paying women for sex, which is just prostitution. One's sex trafficking. But it's not arguable that that Epstein has been in the news. So is it a sick conspiracy theory cult? Okay, the making gravy out of 2-year-old baby's brain stuff is obviously insane. There's no sanity to that at all. But is there a probability chance that there's cartels who distribute large amounts of drugs, and they have a human trafficking network that they use to distribute their drugs? And in those human trafficking networks, they also have human prostitution, sex trafficking networks, where they are doing all kinds of crazy drugged out stuff. Probably. Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, is a crackhead. He was banging hookers too. And then there's some rumors that they were underage hookers. I haven't found any confirmation from that. I think I got that information from Tim Pool. So don't quote me on that. But there is a problem, definitely, with people targeting people online, harassing them, calling them pedophiles. That is bullying. It's cyber harassment. That's not acceptable to do. But the idea that it would make you a bad person to believe that there's some pedophiles who work for our government who've been banging hookers and doing weird drugs from the cartel and there's a bunch of sketchy stuff going on. That's not insane at all. In fact, there's a high probability chance that that's actually happening. So the fact that the U.S. House is actually voting to condemn this is insane. Okay, so there was the thing with Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and we just went through that in the last article. Oh, shoot, I'm doing this article out of order. Oops. I'm not 100% familiar with the beliefs of all the people who were involved in this Governor Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot. One of them was an anarchist, so he was a far leftist, and the other and he was anti-Trump. And then there was some Trump supporters. I don't know anything about their QAnon beliefs at all. I was hoping to look that up. They probably believe some stuff involved in there. Most of them believe that. So QAnon, the fringe movement that promotes wide-ranging conspiracies about the U.S. government, yet has enjoyed a rising tide thanks to conservative politics, in part because of the tactic encouraged by President Trump. I don't think that Donald Trump had really a part of that. Well, maybe. I mean, yeah, well, the conspiracy theory is saying there's the deep state and they're targeting Trump because Trump is, he's not part of the swamp. And the people in the swamp got the pedophile network. And then there's people who think that Trump was sent here by God. He was the chosen one. I call Donald Trump the great white savior. He's the savior of the white people. So people go off on shit like that. They like make memes and they glorify him and make him this like being what am I trying to say? Bigger than life thing. And yeah, I could see how some people could say, all right, like that's like what you would do to a dictator, how you would treat them. But I don't think so, because honestly, they're just being funny a lot of times with those memes, and they believe in limited government, and they don't want over immigration to push them out of their country, out of their homelands, and that doesn't make them bad people. But I don't think that Trump's just like working to the crowd. Trump's trying to just not alienate any voters. The Democrats do the exact same thing. So when Trump isn't condemning QAnon, he's probably out there. He's seeing some QAnon signs out there in the crowd, and he's like, all right, well, these guys are out here supporting me, so yeah, you're awesome. He'll just, not like he's like trying to promote QAnon. He's just not trying to alienate their voters. And it's the same thing with Democrats when they don't condemn Antifa or the Black Looter Mob. Then it's not like they're trying to encourage the riots. They're just trying to not alienate a voter base. And how can you blame any sort of politician for that? I mean, really, it is, if you have X percent of people in the country who are still racist, you probably still want that X percent of votes on your side. They're going to go on one of the sides. So there's no real, I mean, whose side are they going to be on? Like, oh, the racists voted for me, so that means that like my entire party's bad. This doesn't make any sort of sense. It seems like it's like just like an attack. They're like saying, oh, you haven't condemned QAnon. That means you're encouraging QAnon. And then you're not condemning Proud Boys. So that means you're encouraging Proud Boys. That means you're a white supremacist. It's like a transfer logic where they're like, oh, you don't support illegal immigration. Oh, that means that you want to put kids in cages and you're a psychopathic genocidal dictator. It's just crazy shit that they get. People like read articles on the internet. They'll get like, they got a worldview, and then they're looking for articles on the internet. They see them on Facebook. It pisses them off. It fits their worldview. And it's just journalists are trying to sell you on this review because they want you to read the articles. And then they get paid from the Democratic Party through like advertisements. Sorry, I'm going off on a tangent here. I'm going to get back to this. The measure passed 371 to 18, with one GOP member voting present. Wow, that was almost unanimous. So I guess it's not just the Democrats. QAnon is a collective delusion, said House of Rules Chairman Jim Govern, Democrat from Massachusetts. We all must call it a sick cult. I'm calling it funny. I'm not calling it a sick cult. I'm calling this a political attack. I think basically anybody who would vote for this, it's like if you don't vote for this, then you're like supporting it. I don't know, like where the sick cult, like what's this? I just fail to see like where, how is it a sick cult if you think that there's pedophiles and you need to shut the pedophiles down? I mean, yeah, they're wacky, right? But like, is it really a sick cult? I mean, shouldn't a sick cult like be engaging in sick cult activities? Yeah, there's some cyber bullies with them, but a lot of these people are just like, they're just like crazy normal people, like with some like weird wingnut ideas, and they're not really like a threat to anyone. I don't know. I think I'm just failing to see. I've been following this QAnon thing, reporting on it for most of the summer, and I mean, it doesn't really seem like, given the Jeffrey Epstein thing, that it should be that big of a deal. It seems more like they're political enemies. Reading on in the article, the resolution was sponsored by Representative Tom Malinowski, a Democrat running for re-election in competitive New Jersey race, who's repeatedly and inaccurately accused by House Republicans official campaign operation of lobbying on behalf of sexual predators. Malinowski told BuzzFeed those attacks have made him the target of death threats by QAnon believers because a central tenet of the conspiracy involves global sex trafficking rings. Quote, I think they knew exactly what they were doing. They knew they were playing with fire, end quote, he said. Well, you got to look at it from the perspective of people who think that these people there might be pedophiles running our government. So you come out against this group, then you're then automatically labeled as a pedophile. But they don't want the same logic to apply when they want to target white supremacists. So they want to say that they're targeting white supremacists. So this is the QAnon group is operating a lot like the Antifa. So they're saying, oh, so if you're against Antifa, then you're against, then you must be fascist. Because if you're against us, then if you're not for us, then you're against us. And so the QAnon people are saying, okay, well, if you're against us, then you must be a pedophile. So it definitely appears as though this is the pot calling the kettle black here. They're trying to say, no, it's okay for them to riot in the streets, but I don't have anything to do with that. So we're going to shift the blame over here to the QAnon people. And maybe he shouldn't be like trying to pass. Like, what the hell does the US Congress have anything to do with QAnon? Why are they in the House of Representatives pushing this bill through there? Like, what does it do? What does it do when you label QAnon what did they label them? Condemning this theory. You've government sanctioned. So people now, if you believe this theory, now you don't get equal treatment under the government. Now you have been condemned by the government through engaging in free speech. And now you are now targeted if there's any way that they can deprive you of equal access to government programs. For instance, if you're trying to apply for a graduate degree program, now you can be denied because you're part of a sick cult because you believe that Jeffrey Epstein had a pedophile ring. This doesn't make any sense. I think that this was a really bad move from the Democrats and the Republicans because really they're signing on to it because they don't want to get associated with QAnon. They're like, and once they do that, now they're then targeted by the people on the internet who should not be harassing them, but there obviously is a harassment problem. I've been harassed by a QAnon person because they were trying to say it's Republicans that were like involved in this pedo cult and not Democrats. And so I was arguing the other way around. And then this guy started attacking me just out of the blue. I'd have no idea who this dude was. Friend of a friend. And then this dude was obviously a lunatic. And he was a jerk. So that's happening. But like, I mean, what does the U.S. House of Representatives have anything to do with this? It doesn't. This isn't their business to get into condemning ideologies because who are there? They're hating on pedophiles. Like, what is that? Like, not okay? It's like, are pedophiles a protected class of people now? I guess the pedophiles are now a protected class of people because because the U.S. House of Representatives had said that QAnon is what did they say? I keep forgetting. A sick cult. I definitely think that they're a batshit crazy cult of like a bunch of weird old people who are like believe in weird shit. But what effect does this have? What is the next step? Like, all right, so you pass something condemning a political movement, and what does this do? If anybody knows what this does, what is the point of this? How does this help our country out in order to condemn something that we call that they're judging to be a conspiracy based off of negative evidence? You're saying, oh, well, you haven't proved it. So therefore it means that you're like a completely fringe conspiracy theory cult because you don't have any specific connections between Epstein and the president. So that means that the entire thing's bullshit. I don't know. I just don't think that they should be censoring these accounts, even though they're crazy. I think that they have a right to free speech, that they should be allowed to engage in whatever quackery, as long as they're not hurting people. But then again, they're hurting people. I guess that's the argument. They're harassing people on the internet. But is that all of the QAnon people are harassing people on the internet? And how many people are harassing these people? What was it like? Some people tweeted at this guy and then somebody threatened to kill him or something. And then how is that different? I mean, people threaten to kill politicians over stuff all the time. Like, it's actually a repeating pattern they get upset over a large number of things and they threaten to kill politicians. How is that any different than QAnon? It's not. Is there anything else in here that I want to comment on? I think this is fluff down here. The resolution was co-sponsored by 3 Republicans, Reps Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania, Adam Kinzinger of Illinois, and Denver Riggleman of Virginia. Kinzinger has been publicly calling on political leaders, including those in his party, to more forcefully denounce the QAnon movement. I just don't think that this sets a good precedence. Like, so what's the next movement that we're gonna shut down? So we've shut down Proud Boys, we've shut down white supremacists, we've shut down QAnon. So we've moved from targeting white supremacists to targeting people who are trying to take out pedophile networks, human trafficking. What's the next step? Take out anybody who's trying to prevent them from overthrowing our government. This is a slippery slope where you start seceding your powers to the government, and then next thing you know, they start taking more and more of your powers, and then they target, they expand who they're targeting to more and more and more people, and then they start targeting you. You're next. Next thing, it's going to be the flat earthers, and then it'll be the anti-extinction rebellion people, like anybody who's trying to question the dogma of the brainwashed masses. You are now labeled a fringe conspiracy theory wacko. You're going to be canceled. Nobody will watch your YouTube videos. You're not going to be able to work in this town anymore because you're a conspiracy theorist. Now you don't have equal protection under the law. You are now a targeted person. It is now you now that has to live in poverty, who cannot give your children the same things that you got when you grew up. Your standard of living for your children has gone down now. And it's because they're targeting people. This isn't what the United States government is supposed to be there for. The United States government is supposed to also work for QAnon and for white supremacists and for the KKK and for the Black Lives Matter and for Antifa and for the communists and for everybody in this country. It's called equal protection under the law. It's the way our government works. Our system is built on the concept of free speech, where we say, I don't agree with your speech. I'm not, but I will defend until the death your right to say it. And that's been the tradition of America, is that you have a right to say that. And we put laws to stop white supremacists from taking other people's civil rights. Other than that, the United States government does not have a stance on white supremacy. There's no official stance on whether or not people can be white supremacists. That's freedom of speech. There's no laws that say you cannot be QAnon, but I guess now they're saying that QAnon people are to be harassed. You can't have equal part of our society because you believe in some weird conspiracy thing, but then you got people going to churches every single week believing in all different kinds of religions that you can also equally classify as fringe conspiracies. But, you have freedom of religion. You have freedom of assembly. You have freedom of speech. I still haven't figured out exactly what they did. So they're just saying we condemn these things. And what does condemn mean? It's always really easy to forget the meanings of things. So condemn. Express strong disapproval, to criticize. So you're pronouncing a judgment, a sentence. And so they're basically saying QAnon has no truth to it. I guess they did a trial and they brought evidence and they showed you that there's no possibility in the entire world that there's any drug cartels that have human trafficking networks, that these people then control the government. You're talking about negative evidence here. They're condemning negative evidence. You can't do that. It's a logical fallacy to condemn negative evidence. All you can say is, we have no evidence that says that this is true. But I mean, how much bullying are people get on the internet? I mean, is this a situation where this person said they don't like QAnon and then somebody called them a pedophile and then they said, oh, this sucks. Somebody called me a pedophile. Now I'm going to write a bill and I'm going to get other people to condemn QAnon because they called me a pedophile. And then the other people sign on and then people condemn them and say they're a pedophile too. And then then you get this thing passed through the U.S. House of Representatives because these people don't want to get called pedophiles because they're running for office, right? What the fuck does this have to do with our government? What kind of threat? What threat is coming from these QAnon people that is such a threat? All I can see in my months of reporting on QAnon is that you got a bunch of kooky people that show up to some events with some Q flags or some cardboard that they cut a Q out of or some cool sign. You know, it's just some like people up on the internet who are like, think this could happen. But you're trying to say, I mean, if you're going to say, this is like condemning white supremacy, what they're doing. It's functionally identical to condemning white supremacy. White supremacy is, yeah, it's a threat to some people, but there's not like violent white supremacists out there that have been like committing hate crimes. I mean, you're talking about some people on the internet who made some threats in a similar manner to the ways that people make threats about other things. Like a lot of people will threaten politicians that they're going to kill them because they're fucking wingnuts, man. It has absolutely nothing to do with QAnon. It has everything to do with that specific person is a wingnut. But they want to get elected, so they want to show everybody, no, I don't support QAnon. So we're going to waste the United States House of Representatives' time when they're supposed to be helping the people. But instead, we're going to use it for the valuable time in the House to push some condemnation so that they can get brownie points with the electorate. It would be nice if they would focus on something that actually mattered, because this is just a huge waste of my time. I mean, this QAnon stuff is kind of wacky. You know, I definitely don't believe it. But I definitely believe in Jeffrey Epstein.